Hi there, my name is Lauren Reimer Etheridge. You may know me as Pretty Couch Potato on Instagram or on my blog, and I'm here to talk about traveling on TPN. There is a lot to talk about in this realm because there are so many ways to travel. There's traveling by car, there's going on a cruise, there's traveling by plane in your country, there's going outside of your country. There's all kinds of different travel, so I know I'm not going to cover everything today, but I did want to give you a few tips on things that I've learned personally that I think could help you possibly on your next trip. So let's go. All right, so here we go. We're going to cover some topics so that I can break this down a little bit. First, we're just going to have general traveling questions. Like I said, there's lots of ways to travel. So these kind of cover just travel in general. And then I've got a couple on road trips specifically, and then lots on flying and TSA specific questions for traveling on TPN. So let's get on started here. So my first number one travel tip is to see if you are able to have your TPN shipped to the destination you're traveling to. It makes things so much easier. To add to that, I very much encourage you to travel with at least one bag of TPN with you. Just in case, if you're flying and you have a delayed flight or something happens weather-wise or anything, like that happens, you want to have a bag of TPN just in case, because otherwise you'll not have it for that night because your company will most likely not be able to get it to you that day. So that's my biggest tip, is to have it shipped to where you're going, and also travel with a bag with you. So let's move on to the next. What is my most useful thing that I carry to help make traveling with TPN be easier that somebody might not expect? So I don't travel with a magic 8-ball or a magic crystal or magic socks to make things go smoothly. But the two things that I swear by are, number one, checklists, which are so important in the morning before travel, because you may be like me and use a pump that requires to plug it into charge. So you may need to make sure you don't forget your chargers the morning of travel, your pumps that may be charging overnight, all those types of things. So just making sure you make a checklist, and sometimes I'll make the checklist as I'm preparing things the day before. So I'm like, oh yeah, I use this. Even though I use it every single day, sometimes it's just not a thing I think of when I'm packing a bag, because there's just so many things to keep in line. So checklists are amazing, just so I don't forget anything, because as well as I do, is not stuff you can just go to the convenience store and purchase when you get to your destination. So just making sure you don't forget anything. And then also, pretty similar note is just packing extra everything, just in case. So I will pack additional supplies, even if I've had them shipped to where I'm going. I will pack, like I said, I will have my TPN bag for sure, and then I'll have maybe a couple extra days of supplies, just in case, things happen. You may drop a saline flush on the floor and you may not have extras. One thing that is not necessarily TPN related, but feeding tubes. I always travel with backup feeding tubes in case I have a balloon pop or it breaks at whatever degree. A lot of hospitals won't have your exact same tube, and so traveling with a backup is key for me, and I've learned it the hard way. And just traveling with backup, that's really my biggest thing. How can I be sure that my TPN will be delivered to where I'm staying, and that it will be handled properly if I'm not there right away? So this is a question I got from someone. Making sure it's delivered to where you're staying, that's communication. Just like a lot of these things are going to be communicating with your infusion pharmacy and communicating with the place that you're traveling to, whether that be with family or with a friend or like at a hotel or on our Airbnb. And knowing whether it's going to be handled properly is communication again. Just, if it's a hotel, seeing if they have a big refrigerator room that it can stay in until you get there if it's several hours later. Most TPN companies are shipping things in a way that they are able to remain in the box and be safe temperature-wise for a lot of hours, and so you should be fine. But always better safe than sorry. So communication is my biggest answer for that. And just making sure that you're making sure it's going to the right place and in communication with the people that are at that place, wherever you're going. If I'm carrying a lot, what do I do to help with the weight? That is a good question. I have a lot of help. My husband helps carry things downstairs whenever I'm traveling. Most of the time, whenever I'm traveling in my car to a place, I will use a cooler bag with just, ice packs from previous shipments stuffed in. And this is not a good carrying around for a while. This is a good throw it in the car kind of thing. This is not good for weight at all. So I would say, number one, if you don't have a situation where it's easy for you weight-wise, ask for help. And if you are carrying a lot and you need to, a rolling cooler, those are around. You could probably find one easily on Amazon. The way I helped with this issue, I was not carrying a ton of TPN, but on my last trip when I flew, I purchased this nice rolling carry-on bag. It's small, as you can see, like arm size. It's a really sweet, like under the chair in front of you kind of bag, and I was able to put my extra bag of TPN for that night in it, my computer, a notebook, a pencil, my headphones, some snacks, and my pump chargers and my extra pumps and some extra supplies just in case I didn't get to my destination. So I would say a bag like this would be really great for carrying on for flying, and it may, something this size for a car trip with TPN that's a cooler that rolls would be great. Pack it with ice packs and throw it in your car and you can roll it on out of there. So those are my answers for helping with weight, is asking for help and getting a rolling suitcase and or a cooler bag. Okay, the next question is about if I make a plan of what hospital to go to at my destination if something were to happen. I personally do not, but I think that's an excellent idea. Typically, I travel where family is, and so they typically know some of the best hospitals. So definitely if I was traveling internationally or something like that, I would absolutely recommend, doing some research on that. I think that's an excellent idea. Next one is, how do you safely store and set up TPN in a hotel room? How do you do sterile things on the go? So, of course, you're not gonna be able to take, a perfectly TPN safe only fridge unless you're road tripping and feel the need to. That's your choice. But I recommend having a nice hard surface that's able to be easily cleaned. This is a PN setup mat that my infusion pharmacy gave me that is able to be washed with a Clorox wipe or some disinfectant spray. And so you're able to just, know that you're setting up on a really clean surface that you've cleaned yourself, and not relying on the space for sanitizing everything, which is not going to be the case. So, just finding a good space to do that. I have an experience at my in-laws. I have to do weekly dressing changes, and sometimes that falls while I'm traveling, and sometimes you just have to figure out the best space for that, and sometimes it takes a little time. The bathroom we use at my in-laws' house is not, it doesn't have a very big counter space, and there's not really a better space to do that, but I asked my mother-in-law if I could, borrow their master bathroom, which has a huge counter space, and she said, absolutely, that if people are willing to accommodate you, just ask for what you need. So that's kind of how I deal with those things. The only real question that was road trip specific was, how do I ensure that TPN stays cold on a long road trip? I personally don't have experience with a long road trip where I didn't have access to a refrigerator or a freezer to refreeze ice packs for multiple days. So that's not something I can answer from experience, but I'm sure there are, ice packs that stay cold for a really long time. Definitely worth doing some research on for figuring that out if you're wanting to do some sort of road trip where you don't have access to those things. Now, the fun part, flying. So this is usually the part that usually, stresses people out with TSA and traveling with large amounts of liquid and stuff. But really, it's not as scary as most people would think. So here are some questions I received. These are not TSA specific. We have those coming up here in just a second. Do you check any supplies or carry all of them on? So like I've said earlier, I definitely travel with my bag of TPN carried on. I carry everything that I could not survive without if I weren't able to get my checked bag that night or that day of the travel. So supplies for that night, my pumps. Sometimes I feel like my feeding tubes need to be involved in that. The carry on stuff. Definitely my TPN bag. Everything that I will definitely need definitely goes on the plane with me. And anything that is temperature controlled has to go on the plane with you, because under the plane there's no temperature control. So we don't want any frozen TPN or any boiling TPN. I don't know what would happen to it under there, but we do not want TPN to go under where checked bags go. That's not a cool place for them to live. So that's my answer for that. Should you pre-board? That is up to you. If you think that it would help to be on the plane a little bit earlier to get situated, do it. There's really not very many questions asked whenever you ask to pre-board. So I think asking the person at the gate or the ticket counter would be totally valid if you think that would help you and ease some anxiety or anything like that. Can I travel internationally? Absolutely. I personally have not. I have dreams of doing it someday, and I will. There is a formula called Clinomix that is used a lot for people going on cruises, traveling internationally for a while. It's a formula that has a long shelf life, and it does not require refrigeration. So of course it would be a pain to travel with, but it can be done, and that's something you would definitely want to talk to your infusion pharmacy with about long before the trip happened, to make sure that they could accommodate you and make that all happen properly for you, to make sure that trip went smoothly. So if you want to travel internationally, it is totally possible. I know people who have, and I totally have dreams of doing that in the future. Next up, do carry-on bags with only medical supplies count towards my limit? As you may have heard, checked bags that are only medical supplies don't count towards, you don't have to pay for that, like it's a free checked bag. But when it comes to TPN, that doesn't really matter, because like we talked about, you can't check it because it wouldn't be temperature controlled. I messaged TSA on Facebook, which is a really cool feature that they offer, and you can find them at Ask TSA on Facebook, and they reply within like 24 hours, which I think is exceptional customer service. So I did ask them this question, and unfortunately they do not make those choices. It's up to the airline. So I did not have the time to call American and Southwest and Alaskan and whoever else to ask their specific rules for that, but I encourage you to, and maybe it will help you find what airline you love to travel with, because maybe one is more accommodating than the other. So definitely reach out to who you're traveling with to see about how that works with your carry-on and medical supplies. How do I get assistance? So wheelchair assistance, that's also through your airline. So on my most recent trip, I called American, who I flew with, and I asked if I could have wheelchair assistance for my flight the next day, and they said yes, and it went with my ticket. And whenever I checked in for my flight, I reminded them that I needed wheelchair assistance that day, and they called somebody up, and somebody came and picked me up, and it made my day so much easier. They helped through security checkpoint, and it just made things, it was just a lot less anxiety to have somebody there to help, not being flustered with having like 8,000 buckets of stuff that needed to be sifted through and stuff. So that was really, really helpful, and I would absolutely recommend doing that. And I'm so thankful for friends who helped me understand that would be helpful for my travel. So that is through your airline, but these questions are TSA specific. So one thing I want to say about TSA is they are there to do their job. They are not medical professionals. They're there for security. And the reason they have to sift through your things is because they want to make sure there's nothing bad in there. And I think we all love that they're making sure there's nothing bad in anybody's bag. So, it feels invasive, I know, but it's just a part of the process, and it can be okay. And they can be really kind. And as long as you're respectful and understanding, and you're not, make sure you get there on time, early on time, and just so that things go smoothly and you can get through security with ease and not feel stressed, and just they're there to help. So just let them know what's going on. And if you're traveling with medical devices and TPN, like most of us are, just let them know. Just say, I have a central line here, I have a feeding tube here, I have, what you have going on, because they're going to see that whenever you do the body scan. If you are able to go through that, like if all your devices are capable of going through that, they're going to see them there, and you just have to be like, look, this is what's here, this is what's here, and they're going to be very gentle. They're probably going to do a pat down. They're there just to help. So just use your voice, a kind voice, and just be there with them and go with the flow. And then we had a question: do you need a letter from a doctor to get help with TSA and airline accommodations? So this was another question that I sent to TSA on their Facebook messaging situation, and they actually didn't even acknowledge the fact that I asked about a letter from a doctor. I've never used a letter from a doctor. I've never been asked for one. So I don't believe that that's a thing that needs to happen. I think that it is most accepted that prescription medications, your TPN and stuff does have like the prescription sticker on it. So that's pretty much what I saw whenever I was researching was the most important, is with like prescription medications to have, that label on it. And then what's it like going through TSA with TPN and medical devices? Like I said, you're probably going to get a pat down. Usually they try to get a TSA person that is your same, like, female, male, like whatever. And, you can give your preference, honestly, like no matter what you identify as. So, they're very gentle in my experience. Whenever they go around like sensitive areas, like the bottom and the breasts and like groin and stuff, they use the backs of their hands that are gloved. And for everything else, with your arms, like they'll, they just kind of do this kind of thing. And I've really never had any issues. And then they just test their hands to make sure there's nothing, traces of things that they look for, and off you go. If you have questions, there is a program called TSA Cares, and they are exceptional. They actually show up at OLI conferences every year, which is amazing, and I cried the first time I saw them there. And they're just really there to show that they're there to help, and that they want to educate you as much as possible. And I'm going to share that number with you right now if you wanted to give them a call. It is 855-787-2227. So that's an exceptional resource. So it looks like we've gone through all the questions that I received, and I think I've shown you everything I pulled out here. So basically, do it. You can do it. You really can. And I hope you have fun on your next trip. And I'm cheering you on. GPAC's cheering you on. And we're all here as resources. We all have different experiences. And so you have so many people you can ask, how did you do this part? How did you do that part? I'm scared about this. We're not going to judge you. Like, we've been there and we've had to figure it out too. And so, most of us who have gone through the struggle of figuring things out want to share with you. So ask questions. We're all here for you, and we're cheering you on. So You got this.